Oh, yeah, thank you. Good evening and welcome to the September 17th, 2014 Board of Education meeting. Mr. Matt Downey, President of the Board, has a commitment out of town and will not be joining us this evening, so I will be chairing the meeting tonight. We have been in executive session since 6 o'clock discussing personnel and contractual matters. This is the public meeting now. We will start, and I will ask you first to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I'll ask first that the Board of Education please introduce themselves. The members, please.
Christine Beck.
Michael Cooper.
Joanne Cunningham.
Jody Monroe.
Tom Douglas.
Charmaine Widgesinger.
Lynn Lenhart.
Diane Stever.
And Judy Kehoe.
Can people hear us? Are these working? I didn't think so, because I can't hear you. I'm sitting right next to you.
All set?
Is it better? Should we do introductions again? Just go ahead, please.
Christine Beck.
Michael Cooper.
Joanne Cunningham.
Jody Monroe.
Tom Douglas.
Charmaine Widgesinger.
Lynn Lenhart.
Diane Stever.
And Judy Kehoe.
For members of the public, we are being videotaped, so if you come to the mic, just realize you are being taped for the meeting. Also, for participation in government students, the requirement is that you stay until 9 o'clock unless the meeting ends earlier, and if we're going past 9 o'clock, we'll take a brief break for you to sign out. You should sign one of the sheets here, and some of you may require the signature of a board member, so make sure you get from any of the board members who are the members of the community, not members of the staff, a signature if you require it. I think that's it. Oh, by the way, our names are on the website, so if you can't see our names tags, just visit the website and you get the spelling of our names. Okay. So with that, we will go forward with the agenda, please. Item number 2, approval of the minutes of the last meeting. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
That's the first and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? No? That carries. We're moving now into item 3, the Student Senate report. Could the two co-presidents of the Student Government Association please come forward? Introduce yourself, please, and give us your report.
Hello, my name is Chelsea Cato, and I'm the president of Student Senate.
Hello, my name's Gabby Sanders, and today we're going to talk about basically what we have been doing as part of Student Senate. On Wednesday, September 3rd, we had the freshman orientation, and that went really successfully. We also had a meeting with Mr. Landry to talk about possible replacements for the pep rally, which didn't end up going through, but then the freshmen got introduced into the whole idea of Senate, and they had the ability to sign up for Senate. They had petitions, and we went into homerooms in order to recruit them, basically. And September 12th, we had freshman elections. We all went to the homerooms, and we elected 6 representatives that are now part of our homeroom.
On Monday, we announced the winners on the announcements, and we sent 6 representatives into the homerooms to greet the winners, and we brought them back to Mr. Iron's room and introduced them to everyone. Then on Tuesday, September 16th, we had a homeroom celebration with Dunkin' Donuts and cinnamon rolls to make a friendly environment for the freshmen as they were nervous, since most of them never had seen us before. Today, we spoke to the junior and senior classes in assemblies where we addressed what we do as Student Senate, and if they have any concerns, they can come and speak to us.
A big thing that we have been discussing in Senate, even though we only had 1 meeting so far, has been the pep rally and the change of location and what we have to do to accommodate a different pep rally. And we decided that it was like the best and only option to have the pep rally outside this year, because Gym B doesn't have bleachers right now, and there's no other place that can accommodate the student body. We had a whole brainstorming process where we originally were going to do a tailgate sort of thing in the parking lot before the game and have transportation go to the game, but there was a negative student reaction to that, so we decided that it was best to just keep the normal pep rally and just change it but modify it much less than we were originally going to. We voted on the outdoor pep rally on our first meeting, and we are now planning. We have contacted Mr. Nealon about the stage and the sound system and how we're going to do the proper setup in order to make it as natural as possible.
And we contacted Mr. Yera to see if we could use some of his stage props in the area outside. And the area is between lower E wing and lower D wing. It's a big courtyard, and there's a path to walk out into the tennis courts. So we were thinking the stage could be in the corner so that the sound could project, as per Mr. Nealon's suggestion. We had a student volunteer to be the eagle in the eagle costume. Tomorrow after school, we're having a captain's meeting in Mr. Iron's room, E103. So we're going to discuss what the teams can do. This year, there's no dancing. There will only be music and an introduction to all the seniors. On Friday, we will have MC auditions in Mr. Iron's room with Mr. Malizia and Mr. Irons as supervision. And Mr. Malizia has a form where we'll go through and see what we liked about the MCs and what we did it, and then we'll decide on it. And we are going to keep all of the grades separate, the seniors at the far end, the freshmen at the other, to avoid conflict. And right now, we are not sure what we will do if it rains, but we will get back to you on that one. Also, in our meeting, a student proposed us a club that would deal with women's rights in different countries and in our country, and just talk about the daily struggles, I guess you could say, of women. And we approved it. So now we just have to go to the next step to make it an official club. And she came already with an advisor in mind. So now we just have to make it official. And that's it.
Okay. If you could just stay in the mic, just in case the board members have any questions. But congratulations, it sounds like you've had a great start to the year and been very organized and shown very positive and significant leadership. So congratulations. But do any board
Thank you.
members have any questions?
I just wondered if when you were soliciting, going around to the homerooms, did any students have any issues that they wanted to share about school or whatever?
The freshmen, not yet. I think they're still a little timid and afraid to voice their opinions, but I think soon, after they get fully accustomed to the high school, I think they will.
Anybody else? Okay. Before you sit down, we have some pins for you as leaders to the Senate, little eagle pins.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is item number 4, the superintendent's report. Dr. Douglas?
Thank you, Dr. Woodsinger. Ladies and gentlemen, members of the Board of Education, students, it's my pleasure to give you a brief synopsis of the opening of the school year so far, seeing how our board meeting was the night before, I believe was the last time we were together. In general, all the buildings seem to have what would be called a very smooth transition from the summer months to the studies of our educational system here at Bethlehem at the elementary, middle school, and high school level. I'm very proud of all the administrators as well as transportation, our maintenance staff, everyone who works for Bethlehem Central and making sure that the opening went as smoothly as it could, especially in light of the construction project that's going on. So I want to thank all of them for their hard work in making sure that that happened. Additionally, one of the things we talked about at the last board meeting was in regards to the tax bills, and I'd like to at least inform the community that the escrow accounts that were not initially placed onto the rolls have been placed onto the rolls at this point. The district is making personal phone calls to each of the 1,000 entries that were not put onto the roll that have now been put onto the roll. So that's one of the concepts that we're doing, and we will also be following that up with a letter in the next couple of days, just to verify and make sure that everyone is at least set for the time being. We will have to cross-reference that, and then we may have to come back to the board if there's any potential issues down the line, but we're hoping that we've been told by CoreLogic and BOCES that that would not be the case. Additionally, the Board of Education over the next course of the month will head off for the New York State School Boards Association statewide conference, and one of the things the board will need to do tonight is select a voting delegate for the annual business meeting as well as an alternate. So if we can do that, and just to put on the board's mind that in the coming month or so, we need to start having some discussion in regards to an issue from last year, the Veterans Tax Exemption Credit, of whether or not the direction that the board would like to pursue going forward. In general, you know, one of the questions that we've received as a board and as a superintendent is about potential starting times of school. That may be another topic that the board wishes to talk about. Although there are many potential issues with starting school later for high school and middle school students, those are discussions I think maybe you need to have, so at least the community understands what's going on and whether the direction we go forward with any type of planning would fit into that mindscape. Last but not least, I'm very proud to say I had a meeting with Chelsea and Gabrielle today, because one of the initiatives that we're trying to embark upon is also to provide Student Senate more of a statewide connection to student leadership activities. So the advisor, Mr. Irons, and myself have sat down and talked about it, and we're trying to formulate a plan to have our chapter of the Student Senate more recognized on the state level, and also have more access to other leadership activities throughout the state, and that process is underway as of yesterday with Mr. Irons, and this afternoon with the president and the president and vice president of Student Senate. So I'm happy to see that they're very highly motivated. I think the entire Student Senate has been energized this year, and they really want to take an active enrollment. And I know Mr. Landry has also been working with them to make sure that we're always engaged and moving forward here for student leadership. So in general, I think it's been a very good kickoff to the year. We're looking for many things to come, to be bright and positive. I also received a letter that sort of compliments us on being one of the top 500 school districts from the New York State School Boards Association Executive Director, Mr. Kramer, today, and I know that's supported by Ms. Lenhart, the president of NYSBA, as well, but that was a letter he asked us to extend our thanks and gratitude to the Bethlehem community, so.
Thank you. Before
Thank
we
you.
vote on the delegate and alternate, can I just ask Mrs. Lenhart, because the community may not know what the School Boards Association Conference is and why we need to go there, so would you mind just taking a moment to sort of inform the students and the community of
Sure.
why school board members would need to travel to a conference and what the nature of that event?
Well, in one way, I look at it as professional development. I mean, we look at our administrators, we look at our teachers who spend a lot of time with professional development in order to do their jobs better. And in a sense, attending, whether it's the annual conference, which is what Dr. Wischersinger is talking about, or just attending, one-day conferences locally, it's to help all of us be better board members, make best decisions for you and for everyone in the community. And in the annual conference, it's once a year, and this year it happens to be located in New York City. Last year it was in Rochester. And it's an opportunity for school board members around the state to get together, and there are educational sessions and speakers and opportunities even to mix with other board members and find out what's going on in other parts of the state and share, or commiserate on what's going on in their communities. So that's another plus for doing that. So we'll be doing that at the end of October.
Great. And during the convention, there is a business meeting, and that's why we need voting delegates. So-
Right, that's why we vote on officers and, but then also vote on resolutions of what board members want the association to push forward with the legislature to make changes that are of related to education and to, could be student achievement, it could be transportation, could be anything involving the business of school districts. And so each school district can have, each board can have a delegate and an alternate to actually vote at the business meeting. And that's what we need to decide on,
Thank
who
you.
would like to do that.
So can I open the floor for the board to discuss voting delegates? I know Mr. Downey expressed an interest in being the delegate, basically, and not the alternate, but is there anyone else on the board who is interested in being the voting delegate?
I'd just like to encourage other board members to consider being the alternate. I was the delegate, I think, 2 years. And it's a fascinating process because it's really democracy in action. You are setting the legislative agenda for the School Boards Association for the coming year. And it's just an interesting process to sit through. I would be willing to be the alternate, however, my travel plans down to the convention are up in the air right now, so I don't think I should put my name forward for this year.
I would put my name forward for delegate. I've not done that yet for alternate.
Okay. Is anyone else
Unless
interested?
Christine.
Either way. I think that would be great if you were a delegate.
There are a
Did
lot
you-
of educational sessions going
Yeah,
on at the
during
same
that
time that
time.
that
Okay.
you might want to take
Sure.
advantage of too.
You know, I have
So-
found that the business meeting, I know this year it's moved a little bit different into the center almost of the conference as opposed to
Right,
the
it's
end.
Monday afternoon at
But
one.
during that time, there'll be sessions running. It's almost like we go to class while we're down there. And I do appreciate going to the sessions. I know I've been to ones on turf field management, school safety, superintendent supervision. So while the business meeting's going on, it's a great opportunity to attend the educational sessions. And I know I've always come back with material, but also so much more information on the issues and the complexities of running school districts. So if are you comfortable with Diane being the
Yes.
alternate? Okay.
I mean, most likely Matt will be there and do it.
Okay. So we're putting forward Matt as the delegate and Mrs. Giacomo Stever as the alternate.
Do we
Correct.
need a motion?
Do we need to vote on
You
that?
should officially
Okay.
motion.
Okay. So a motion first, and do I hear a second? Second from Mike. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That carries. Thank you. Okay. Anything else on your report, Dr. Douglas? Okay. I believe we go next to item 5, Board of Education report. It's an opportunity for anyone on the board to share something on his or her mind or something that he or she has done since the last board meeting.
I was glad to see you bring up the starting times, because that was brought up last night. So I don't know if you're planning on doing like committees of that or how to go about doing that,
Starts here.
but, so.
So I'm interested in that also. What are the barriers or what are the complications in doing that? Is it,
Well,
you
just so
know,
that you know, there's major contract implications.
contract implications?
There's also major athletic and extracurricular activity implications. that
Right.
Starting times change, everything changes. There's busing, transportation issues that could potentially arise. Right now, your upper level students get home before your lower level students.
Right.
And sometimes that also creates another issue out there that childcare becomes an issue too. So there's a host of topics that you would have to discuss. Research has always been very clear that the students in this room probably do better at 9 o'clock than 7 o'clock in the morning. Can I have a show of hands who would love that? Okay. How many of you are athletes? Would you be for it if you wouldn't be able to start practice till probably about 4 or 4:30? Okay? So those are, I mean,
And you
you get a
guys
lot of
know-
political pushback one way or the other.
And you guys know that it means you're getting out 2 hours later.
Or an hour. I mean, if even they do it in a half
Right.
hour, I
Well.
don't know. But whatever, yeah.
But those are the discussions first the board needs to
Right.
hash and sort of really have some discussions on whether it's a viable alternative here when almost every other school may not be in that position.
Right.
Doesn't Gilderland do it that way?
Well, Gilman has their elementary start early and their middle school start later so that
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
can
They're in
watch
the-
their kids. But the high school,
Right.
they actually, first period, Well, they're a block schedule, but they start right at 7:30, and they have homeroom after that hour and a half, the first
I don't know,
period,
Mike,
so.
It also may have implications for students who have jobs after school, so.
Has major
Keep that
employment
in mind.
implications, I imagine, too. So, but that's just a,
We should talk about it and look at it.
yeah.
But it would be helpful to have some information for us to
Right.
sift through.
I've always been interested, because I always assumed it was just an easy fix for transportation to shift the high school back 15 minutes and the middle school forward 15 minutes. But I now know that it's not, nothing's easy, but it sounds like there's some consensus of the board that there should be some investigation of possibilities, whether it's switching one school slot for another school slot or combining
Well,
slots. Is
I
that-
wouldn't go as far as any specific, just
Right,
an
right.
open discussion.
Open discussion, okay. So is the board asking for additional information?
Yeah, because, yeah, and then I was also even thinking, if you go, like, what do you have at the high school now, like 8 periods? 9 periods?
9 periods.
Well,
8
ninth period is
with
really
ninth
after
period.
school.
Why do you ask that?
No, I was just thinking, like, but this is, again, bigger discussion, something of, I know you said with contractual things, but isn't there a way, like, and this could alleviate some of the band and all that other issues, of course, if we added the period, but isn't there a way to do, I know, but like a 2 through 9 schedule or a 1 through 8? I mean, do all teachers have to come in at the same time?
Those
I
are
don't
all
know.
contractual
So,
issues
just-
that would have to be
Right.
considered.
I see Miss Monroe sitting
I
there with a huge grin on her face.
I think we've had some of these discussions.
Yes.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, but
We haven't
it's something,
people-
it's in a response, it's something the board would like to, from that response, at least get some more information on to try to wrap your hands around it and see, with no potential decision for an outcome. I just don't see that as something that's going to be easily done in the time periods that we have, just even over the course of the year, but
No.
might be part of plan.
Couple years.
Right.
Could also a start be that if it has been a historic topic, perhaps at the next meeting or over the course of this fall,
Yeah, we'll try
update the
to
board
schedule
on the history.
In looking at the daily schedule, what Diane was
Okay.
referring to, talking about some of that's been looked at several times, actually. So we do probably have some information on
Okay.
that.
We'll try to wrap
Some
some
of it was
things
in
up so
terms
that
of
we don't
needing
get
more
bogged down.
space, we need more space, so.
We don't
then,
have
you know,
that
have-
issue.
No, we don't have that issue, but that's why we're looking at, like,
Jen?
what's rate, 2 through 10.
I would think teachers would love that, having the opportunity to either, come in early or go, leave early or whatever.
Joanne?
Is there any data that is driving this discussion? In other words, is there data out there that's showing that high school students perform better if they start later than?
Well, I
So,
think the discussion started
Yeah.
with the National Association of Pediatrics.
Suggesting it.
Issued a statement saying that high schools should start later.
but that's based on
Oh,
some
several
data,
research studies.
some-
There's a lot of research studies on
So there is a data push that's driving this issue to be,
Well, there's data out there.
right,
The issue isn't necessarily being driven anywhere.
right.
It's very spotty at best. I mean, if you surveyed across New York State, because that's really where we would be looking at, how many schools do it, I don't know what you'd find, but I would probably say you find a majority of the high schools,
Start early.
if not a significant majority of the high schools, are the first in and they're first out because they get up, go, parents usually send their little children out, and if anything, and there's childcare, the senior child comes home and helps alleviate that as well. Even though that's not the intent, it's just one of the
Right.
byproducts of it.
But it does alleviate the before and after school care,
Yes.
which is also an issue for many people.
Yes,
All right.
so.
Well, it might be interesting to know then also, if there's a way to survey this, are there districts out there now with an alternate schedule? That might be another way of reporting about it. This is what it looks like in X district, and this is how it works
We
and
would
why it
probably
works.
find fewer districts, but
Okay.
yeah, the reverse is probably the better way to look at it.
Okay. And, Joanne, I suspect that it's not so much that high schoolers perform better later. It's, I think people need they recommend a minimum number of hours of sleep, what it might be 8 or 9. And since high schoolers stay up later, that 8-hour window of
Right.
sleep starts at 11 o'clock at night, and then therefore it's 8 o'clock, and that's another way of
Right,
looking at it.
I'm willing to bet that if the high school started later, most high school kids would go to bed later. So, I'm not sure there's any real
Well,
rationale.
let's ask, how many of
So-
you would probably go to bed later?
Come on, be honest.
Come on, be honest. Okay.
All right, well, good. So it sounds like we at least want some initial data, some
We'll see,
history.
we'll try to schedule it in one of the future meetings.
Okay, great. And that's a nice lead-in to, any other Board of Education reports, by the way?
I just wanted to ask a quick question. The high school parking, I know that
Oh, yeah.
an SNN came out about not parking on Van Dyke, and I had the pleasure of driving to the high school this morning, and it took me over 30 minutes to get in and out this morning. So I wanted to see if possibly we could look into some other alternative.
Like take the bus?
Well, actually, I was going to ask Mr. Landry, just for clarification, because the way I read that SNN is that you're not even supposed to pull over on Van Dyke.
Correct.
You have to go only to the front. So could we ask
Yeah.
Mr. Landry just to
Yeah,
provide
Mr.
clarification?
Landry, this is probably about how children get dropped off. One of the problems I know he's been having is people will stop on Van Dyke, drop off their kids, so they don't have to turn in and they make a quicker getaway. That's a safety issue, but Scott, I just thought you were at first talking about the parking and parking lot and kids having to park out there. That's been the topic of the kids all day.
Yeah, I
so.
want to talk about that, too.
Okay. Actually, Mr. Landry, would you mind coming to one of the microphones just so everyone in the room can hear you? Thank you.
Maybe with the construction.
Okay. So, Christine, you raised something first. What did you?
Well, first, getting in and out of the high school lot, I understand that there is a bus available, but on certain occasions, there may be a need to come to the high school.
Yes.
And I think it's a little problematic for a parent who has to bring their child in for a 30-minute drop-off pickup. So I was wondering if we could look at alternate resolutions. One of the thoughts I had was we have Eagle available to us over there. The students aren't there yet. Is there a possibility that maybe we could use that as an area where we could do a runoff?
That's one of the ideas I think parents have picked up on. The reason we closed off that back to parent drop-off and all along Van Dyke was that's where the buses enter, that's where a significant amount of students cross, and parents were either pulling in that larger opening right across from Eagle and just stopping in the middle of the crosswalk, thus buses couldn't get in. The other thing people were doing was going in the back faculty parking lot and coming around that area. The problem there is that is where our buses with students with special needs, we have a number of students in wheelchairs, that's where they drop off because that's where the ramps are and it's out of traffic. And so, yes, thus everybody has to go up front. We've talked about it in student senate homerooms, I think 3 years straight now in regards to that and trying to come up with different solutions. The problem is we are on a corner lot. There's 2 entrances in and 2 exits out. The students and I have talked about if we had a magic wand, we would put one exit.
But there's 2 lanes. I think you meant there's 2
Right.
lanes out.
But they're both, we'd want to put a circle in if we could wave a magic wand. We think that would help. Everybody, there's 15, well, no, if you add everybody up, it's about 2,000 people trying to get into this place from 7:20 to 7:30. And we haven't figured it out. We've been making adjustments. I've been in very close contact with Detective Rice. We've had a number of times when a uniformed police officer with the sirens just on so people know to slow down and drop off. And any solution you come up with, because we don't know, and we can't control that front entrance exit because that's the...
Have we looked at Eagle as a potential?
I would certainly say that maybe we look at that. I would want, honestly, I would like to ask Detective Rice too in regards to the amount of foot traffic going across, some ideas beforehand, but that seems to make a lot of sense, so I
I was
don't.
just worried about safety this morning because there's kids walking, people are dropping off in the parking lot, and it was pretty chaotic, so I had a little bit of a.
In my 3 years, it's been the number one issue that parents talk about. And unfortunately, although they did a traffic study to create the front parking lot and student drop-off, it's probably not paying off, is the best way to say it. I'm cautious about using Eagle. Parents already do, but I'm cautious about it because they put a crossing guard out at one point. That's something the town does, and I don't know if they have the resources to do a crossing guard at Eagle for high school students.
Well, something to look
Yeah.
into.
I mean, and it's just, remember, even though it's 7:30, we have people also going into Eagle. So we may take one area and try to solve a problem and actually cause another problem. So I just don't know. It's just, it's not a very pleasant system here, as I'm looking at the construction manager, and he knows it, because even the construction crews get a little caught up in it,
Right.
just because, like Mr. Landry said, there's basically 2 entrances in that funnel to 1 entrance really out.
Right. But if it's been a problem for 3 years, I think we
Yeah.
probably should really.
Oh, it's
take
been a problem for a decade.
Actually, I think there's 3 entrances, actually. The side, the one in the center, and the one that, as people are exiting, there's an entrance right there, too.
Yeah.
One of the things that, I've been here 11 years now, and one thing I miss a lot as an administrator in this building is we used to have a full-time parking monitor who was here from 7:15 until about 2:15, and not having a full-time presence in the parking lot. And a lot of times, it's just a body. We try and get out there, but we also have students in this building that we have to supervise in the building as well. But that's,
But that monitor wouldn't help the traffic situation, would it?
it was a presence.
Yeah, but
I mean,
how
they
would it-
can't direct traffic, but when I go out there, people drive a little slower. When Detective
No,
Rice goes out
I
there,
think what you're missing, my point, Scott, is that even if you had a full-time monitor out there, it doesn't change the drop-off and pickup
no,
situation
but
whatsoever.
I
It may
think
slow
it
some
helps.
people down.
But it helps with safety.
Yes,
Right.
it helps with the safety.
That's what I was saying. I know it's not the cure-all. The
But
cure-all
still,
is we need a
You know,
4-lane.
Plugman goes out at the middle school, and it seems to run rather smoothly
Yeah.
over there with the, I mean, it's not the same number of people, but.
Right.
Joanne, do you want?
I think the middle school is equally horrible, to tell you the truth.
I think Mr. Klugman should come up.
No, I just think there's a ton of parents who drive their kid every single day to school, and they never take the bus. So you have that on top of isolated situations where you have to bring your kid to school because of some
missed the
mitigating
bus,
reason.
yeah.
So, but you do see, I don't drive my kids very routinely, but you do see the same people every single time, and I think they.
And I
Their
think
kids don't
also,
take the
it's
bus.
not just unique to middle school and high school, although they have some of the drivers not at the middle school, but it's almost like that at each one of our elementary schools
Yeah.
as well. I mean,
Except you
it just
can't pull in
depends
the
on
parking
how
lot
many are
on some of them.
coming to school each day versus riding
Yeah.
the bus.
I
Just a
wanted to.
thought.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, as we were talking, I don't know if this is possible, but something to explore. That section between the end of the football bleachers and the bus garage, if we build I don't know if this is us or if that's the town, but almost like those text areas on the thruway, if parents can swing in there out of traffic, drop them off, and then go. It's a thought.
The next bond.
We just kind
Yeah,
of.
the next
The next
bond.
bond.
The next bond, I was gonna say.
But that wouldn't be, I don't know, we. if the
Community
board worked, that's
service
what they
project.
did. They made like
That would be a
little-
bond for us.
Right, right, there'd be a bond, yeah. But it seems like I know it's a concern, I was there this morning in the fog too, and I thought, but I will make a statement after everyone else answers the questions. I think there is a traffic situation, but there's also just a plain impatience and bad driving situation. And I'm not talking about the students either, but you want to talk about?
Yeah, I wanted to ask, is the $50 fee to park in the parking lot a new thing?
I call my witnesses.
Well, and the reason I had some concerns is, you know, a lot of kids have jobs after school. The entire varsity hockey team in the winter has to drive from school to the rink with their big bags. So a lot of kids, you know, have to get themselves to school in a car because they have somewhere to go after school. And $50 is, you know, that's a decent amount of money to
I found out
charge
it
a
used to be
student.
110.
Well, regardless,
120?
it's,
Oh.
you know, it's a lot of money, and I also wonder, I mean, the monitor that you spoke of, I think, was checking the parking passes. Because I'm a school board member, I wrote the check, even though because I don't want my vehicle towed, as was the threat. But I just wondered, is this something new? I never heard of this before this year. I never wrote a check before, but, you know, my car's been sitting in that parking lot prior. I gather this monitor used to actually find the cars that were.
There is a rationale behind it.
Okay.
And yes, it was $120 when I got here. And then, you know, that's gone through a couple things. Last year, we tried something new, and that was, I don't think we started charging, but not many people paid, and then we said, well, you know what? We'll just let them go.
Right.
And what we found last year was the parking lot became sort of the Wild West, because there wasn't really, I know, there wasn't really an ownership piece on the students' behalf, and it was really hard to enforce, and there wasn't any leverage. It didn't seem as though there was any leverage, because, and the example I gave today when we were talking about that, because strangely enough, that came up in our senior discussion today, that I use the analogy of if someone gave you a pair of shoes for free, you'd be less inclined to take really good care of them. If you had to work and buy that pair of shoes, you tended to govern and take better care of that. That's what we were kind of looking at with adding that 50, so that those students who really needed to use it and obeyed the rules, the traffic rules, and there was a bit of ownership. And I said to them, we're trying something because last year was a disaster and it didn't work. This year we have more people buying tickets. It's easier for us to go out and know who's supposed to be there and who's not, because last year we also couldn't keep track of who was in visitors, who was in faculty, who was in staff. We're trying something. Whether it works or not, we'll see.
Part of the logic behind that was that we considered, the board at the time, considered parking to be a privilege, not a right of students. And people in the community objected to our expanding the parking lot so much for a privilege as opposed to, quote, a right. Certainly, the staff is entitled to have parking spaces, but we do provide transportation. So that was the logic there, and that the $120 was to help pay for the expansion of the parking lot, you know, for that, quote, privilege. And that's how that came to be.
Can students park on Van Dyke?
Yes.
They can. Now, can you just clarify for the community, since it's being taped, should parents be pulling off to the side of Van Dyke to drop off kids, or do you want them to just use the front?
I would say just use the front, because
Sure.
we really have no control out on Van Dyke. We do have at least the traffic pattern that was approved working for us. And because I asked the question, and I've asked the question a couple times, and the best description given to me by someone who was above me said, Scott, go ahead and put the cones out there and change the traffic pattern the way you want. Because the first time there's an accident, you're going to be personally liable. Because as it's set up right now, we haven't had any accidents. And I went, yeah, good point.
Last question I have is the parking pass that is currently on my vehicle is a 1314.
Right.
Are they getting updated, or is it a 2-for-1
Or are we going
this
to be
year?
towed?
No, because actually, it saved us money, so we know what number we started at with the 13, 14s, and have explained that instead of shelling out more money to just get new ones, we still had a big stack of 13, 14.
And is there any thinking to some sort of accommodation for kids that have to drive during a certain period? Like, again, I'm thinking of, the varsity hockey players who have to get
That might-
themselves to
that
the
might
Y
be-
for 12 weeks in
Right.
the winter.
That might be something that we consider. That
Yeah.
would make sense, because we already have that, because some seniors do not have the privilege of driving, and so they have to wait until second semester, or
Right.
that they earn that back, and they pay a prorated. So maybe we explore an option for,
Right.
say, a winter sport athlete who needs to drive.
Right.
I would not be opposed to that.
And maybe not just a senior. I mean, last year, my daughter, who was a junior, gave my son, who was a freshman, a ride to the rink every day. So maybe
Yeah.
we,
Yep.
especially for that, I mean, that's an entire team. And I'll tell you, there's a little bit of a parent scramble trying to figure out how you get, 22 kids to the
Mhm.
Y, all of whom are carrying big bags, and A, shouldn't be walking, and B, can't walk with, the size of the gear.
And the sidewalk ends.
And the sidewalk ends, I mean, I wouldn't want anyone to walk
Yeah.
to the Y.
No,
with-
I think that's a good idea. We
Yeah.
can
But you have to
certainly
look at there's kids who have internships. You have
Sure.
to
No,
look
and
at
this
all
is-
Oh,
aspects. It's
absolutely.
not
Yep.
just
And there's
athletic.
also free parking on Van Dyke. You just may have to get there a little
Early.
bit early.
Mhm.
It's always a good thing when school's
That's not
concerned.
good. Any other questions about parking and cars for the?
Are we gonna look into a potential, have a discussion about potential options? Because I still think it's a problem that shouldn't go not addressed till the next bond.
Where's the issue? Is it waiting in line to get
I
out?
think it's the front of the school where people are coming in because there's a line coming in from Van Dyke, then there's a line coming in from Delaware, and then they go into the student parking area. So you have kids being dropped off there, cars moving, kids who are student drivers coming into the parking lot, walking with cars trying to get out, and they're not patient. They're trying to get to work or wherever.
My honest opinion, there is no solution.
Yeah, I'm
This-
not
Well,
sure in
couldn't
the
you
front
have like a
there is.
traffic person,
Well,
police
there's
officer
too
out
many
there?
cars, because I came in this morning and cars back up on Van Dyke. There's just so many cars coming in, there's no space for them to go. And then my experience, I try to get here fairly early if I'm gonna drop off, but, there's a certain window you have to get here early, and if you miss it, then you're in the middle of mayhem. I mean, I was in the middle of mayhem this morning, and there's fog, and there's kids, and there's very impatient drivers, or just bad driving. So
And-
that.
And to complement that, there's also the drivers that will only drop off their child at the front door
Yeah, that happened,
and then
yeah.
stop everything. So there's a lot of courtesy issues going on, that if you move up to the farthest distance so that everybody can get in, everybody drops off and a group goes out, unfortunately, that's been his dilemma, and it's really a high school issue that you can only ask so much, but we're dealing with people that also prefer it their own way, and you can't change that behavior.
So I think at this time, we just asked for community cooperation and student cooperations for safety, and look at it in possible patterns or resolutions. It doesn't seem like there may be ones that are immediately accessible to us. And then, I actually thought to say, in the next bond, we should look at a traffic study. And it's unfortunate to say we have to wait for another bond, but I don't think we have money to do a major
Well,
renovation of the
the
parking
amount
lot.
of money would be
As an option,
different.
Can we look at Eagle as an option?
I think
on-
the option's already being used. I wouldn't make it a
Okay.
formal option.
Okay.
Especially if we ever change our times.
Yeah.
However, we are looking at the construction project tonight on the agenda and change orders. I know there is a list of wishes. If there is money left over, there, we could potentially
No,
add.
that's not in the approved project at
It's
this
not,
point.
okay. It's not, okay. So, okay. Any other board reports, issues? Okay. And we're moving now to the academic update presentation by Ms. Monroe, who is the Assistant Superintendent.
I'm just gonna go back a little bit.
Let me just move that forward.
And can I just ask, well, she's setting up, will this PowerPoint be on the website at some point for students if they want to look at it at
I
home?
think we attach all of our PowerPoints to it.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. I'll try and go through this rather quickly so the young men and women can get home and get to bed, get their rest tonight, so they won't be tired tomorrow morning.
So they can drive safely in the parking lot.
Tomorrow. Okay, so what I'm going to present tonight, we typically do this every fall. We do an overview of the academic program, specifically focusing on some of our assessments that students take the previous year. So, as usual, we've made adequate yearly progress in all exams and subgroups. We also are a district in good standing. I know last year we presented that Glenmont was a school on a local assistance plan because of the disparity in special education and general ed results. And I'm happy to say that they made progress and they're no longer on that assistance plan, so I'd like to congratulate them. I'd also like to recognize all of the principals and supervisors who are here this evening, so if there's questions the board has, if I cannot answer them, I'm sure one of these individuals can. So last year, we began the new Common Core exams, and I think everyone is very familiar with a lot of the attention they've received. And I'm not going to go, there's a lot of numbers in tonight's presentation, obviously, and I'm going to try and highlight some of the larger points and also indicate some areas that we want to address moving forward. So this is the summary of our ELA results, and we still have levels 1, 2, 3, and 4. Level 3s and 4s are considered proficient on these assessments. Levels 1 and 2 are below proficiency. So if you look at our results, you can see that although the percentages don't look stellar for sure, you can see that we're well above the statewide proficiency. The proficiency in the state was 31.4%, and we're generally about 20% or more higher than that for proficiency for all of our students. And I also want to point out, this is just a summary of the New York State results and our results in graphic form. You can see that one of the areas across the state that's a bit lower is grade 6. I'm not sure if that's the assessment itself or just general performance. Many students come out of elementary school with a lot of minutes and a lot of instruction in English language arts, and typically in middle school, they tend to get a lot less instruction in English language arts, typically a 40-minute period, 45-minute period, so there's a big shift there. Again, I don't have data to support that. That's just a theory, perhaps. And these are our math summary results. Now, math gets a little bit trickier this year. If you remember last year, New York State got a waiver from the federal government so that students didn't have to take multiple exams. So what that meant for us is we have grade 7 and 8 students who took integrated algebra exams with a Common Core. They took Common Core and integrated algebra. So what that means in regards to proficiency is that those students who took those exams in algebra, if they received a passing score, which all of those students did, those translate into levels 3 and 4 proficiency depending upon the scores that they received on that exam. So in grade 7 and 8, the asterisk is to indicate that not all of our 8th graders took the same exams, but when you combine the algebra students with the 8th grade students, the proficiency is 58% in 7th grade, and 47% in grade 8. And you can see the number of students that took those different exams, 122 8th grade students and 23, which is a significant, in 8th grade, it's a significant number of our students. And again, the same picture, and you can see the 8th grade results overall are a little bit lower statewide. Again, these are students, remember, in 7th and 8th grade who are still transitioning with the Common Core. They're not the students who began Common Core in elementary, so there definitely are some gaps in some of their learning. And what this demonstrates is some increases that I thought were important. Aside from the fact that we're significantly above the state average in proficiency, you can see that from last year to this year, our students made significant progress. The state increase in general was about 1%. So overall, we made in elementary, 8-10% increases from last year on these exams. Middle school, not quite as significant. One of the areas that we're spending some time is 6th grade, those results went down. Again, it's 1 year of students, it's one cohort, so you have to be careful as to what you take out of that. And again, remember, we don't get a lot of data back on these assessments to really be able to dig down and determine where students are falling short. And this just breaks it back down by general ed, so you can see the increases are about the same. Again, 6th grade went down a little bit, but overall, we're up about 4%. In special education, I know there's been a lot of talk and discussion about can special education students really perform on these exams? And certainly they're not at the proficiency level that the general ed students are, but you can see they made significant progress from last year's exams to this year's exam. The scales on these exams were the same. So, and again, we see the same trend in 6th grade, a drop from last year. So we're working in this area as well. And this is our math results. Again, you'll see the same trend. We're up about 10 or 12% from last year. Again, the 7th and 8th grade does include the areas where the students took the integrated algebra. And I should clarify, the integrated algebra, the 8th graders and 7th graders did take integrated algebra and Common Core. However, the proficiency counts for whichever exam they scored higher on, which for most of our students was integrated algebra. And these are the general ed results. Again, similar trends. You can see a big jump. 6th grade went up 20% from the prior year. Again, these are students now coming up in the elementary school where you see higher increases that have had Common Core instruction, most likely since 3rd or 4th grade, so they've had several years of it now. And the special ed students made significant gains as well. Again, not as significant in the middle school, and these are some areas that we're looking at. One of the things that, for math specifically, is we've done obviously some significant changes in our curriculum. We also have an aligned new textbook series with a lot of online resources for both students and parents and common assessments. So I think that that'll be helpful. In the past, teachers were trying to pull from different resources because there weren't a lot of great Common Core resources out there. So I think that that will be helpful. In science, these exams, there is discussion about new science standards. However, the state has not moved on them. So these exams have stayed fairly consistent from year to year, and you can see our proficiency result. This is all students have remained very high and consistent as well. And our math regents result, you'll see that this is broken out by the years and what our passing rate is. Again, our passing rate is extremely high every year, in the 90th percentiles for sure. This year, you'll see the Common Core algebra exam. And the algebras exam is scored on a little bit different scale. It's a 1 through 5 scale. And levels 3 through 5 for the state are considered proficient for accountability purposes. You can see that with the Common Core exam, there was a few more failures overall. But certainly, Mr. Hurst is still getting some data back from other districts because this isn't necessarily out on statewide information on how we performed compared to other districts on the Common Core algebra exam, and we performed very well comparatively. Our science regents results, you can see that, again, we have very strong results in this for passing rates. We also have strong results for mastery, and we have very few students who don't pass the science regents exams. And we have a lot of students who do take 4 years or more of these exams or these classes. Social studies, you'll see the same. Our results are very consistent from year to year in regards to passing as well as mastery. World languages, you'll see a few that say not applicable. If you recall, the New York State several years ago, in order to save money, essentially cut out the state regents exams for foreign language, but still required a similar assessment that the district develops and administers, and it's a requirement for graduation still. So it's called really Checkpoint B. We refer to it Checkpoint A in the middle school and Checkpoint B in the high school. French, Spanish, Latin, and Chinese. And the years, for example, in Latin, where you see there's a not applicables because we didn't offer that level of course that particular year. In Chinese, if you recall, we've only had it for a few years, so there was certain groups of students that did not take those exams because we didn't have students at that level yet. But you can see, again, passing is very high and mastery, again, is very high consistently. In English, students only take one English exam in their 11th grade year. I should point out that there will be a Common Core English Regents exams. They're putting out a few things related to that. That will be for next year's junior class. So this year's junior class will still take the traditional Regents exams, and the following year, that will be the first year for the Common Core English Regents. It will be, again, on a 1 through 5 scale as well. And we have a large number of students who take the AP exams. And this chart reflects the AP exams that we offer. You can see from year to year. So you have the number of students who took the exam, and then what the average score. Again, AP is on a 1 through 5 scale. So across the board, if you look at biology, for example, you can see this year 46 students took AP Bio, and the average out of 5 was a 3.7. And our results are fairly consistent from year to year. Obviously, the lower the number of students who take the exam, the more significant a few students make in the overall average. But consistently, we're generally mid-3s to around a 4 for our average, again, depending upon the numbers. And you'll see shortly how many students total we actually have taking the AP exams. So these are the other exams. You can see some of them, US history, world history. We always have a large number of students who take those exams consistently from year to year. And some of times where you see, for example, maybe one year there were 50-some students, and the next year we have 25, for example, in psychology, or 27. That generally is we might have one less section for students to enter. And this is the total number of AP students. You can see back in 2010, we had 408 students, and the number of exams were 678 exams. In 2014, we had 455 students take at least one AP exam, with 822 total number of exams that we administered. Our average students who scored 3 or above, which is typically, depending upon the program, I want to be cautious about this, depending upon the program they want to go into in college and the school, but typically a 3 on the AP exam would grant students college credit, again, depending on program in college. And the total number of students is 88%. Compared across New York State, the percentage is about 67%. So our student score is significantly higher overall for level of scores 3 and above. And this reflects the increases over the last 5 years. The graduation rate is a little tricky because if you look on school report cards, the percentages here don't always align with those, and that's because New York State, one graduation rate is calculated on a 4-year cohort, meaning those students complete high school in 4 years, and then there's also a 5-year calculation as well. So these are our actual students that we account for, and in 2013-14, we have 97% of our students who finished within the 4-year time period. So we do have students who didn't graduate, who are returning for this year. Maybe they might have a semester, they might have another full year. Some students opted for a GED program if that's the case. So we do have some students who are returning. So next year that percentage would go up. And what you have here, there's different different diplomas, and it breaks down. We had 375 graduates this June, and these are the different types of diplomas that were awarded during the graduation ceremony. We have about 73% of our students go to four-year colleges, 23% to 2 years, so about 96% of our students do go to some college, and then 4% either do military, they go to a technical school, or some of them are already employed. Some areas, not only based on the assessment data, certainly that's something that we always look at to the degree that we can, but obviously we need to still continue work to align the curriculum in ELA and math, particularly at the high school level, because that's those students who are kind of moving up and we're aligning that curriculum from year to year. We also did receive a grant with Sienna through the National Science Foundation to plan for a computer science course at the high school for next year. So we'll be working on that this year. Obviously, response to intervention for RTI is something we've been doing at the elementary level for the last couple of years. And that's really made some significant difference. I think in some of the results you see in regards to special education students improving on those assessments and students who traditionally have not done well. So we'll continue to look at those. Social studies, there are new standards that the state adopted. They're still a little bit out as far as when they're implemented, but we're going to need to begin looking at that at the elementary level and what we need to adjust for social studies. There's also AP curriculum revisions that are essentially taking the AP exams and aligning them similarly to kind of the Common Core. So each year we have some revisions to the AP curriculum because of some of those new assessments, and that's a phase-in. And then we're continuing to explore the IB program at the high school level. We started working on that last year, and we're going to plan some visitations for faculty who are interested in going to see some IB programs in the feasibility of us offering that at the high school. Some of these we will be presenting throughout the year at the Board of Education meetings, and some of them I'll keep you apprised of as we go through the steps. Questions?
I'll take questions from the board first, please.
I have a couple. So the Common Core curriculum began in school year 11-12. I mean, when,
So-
you saw some of the data change in the 11-12 seemed like that was the year.
Yep.
So that's my assumption, or they didn't test in the prior?
Well, the tests weren't aligned to the Common Core. They were aligned to the old
Right.
standards. So knowing that, for example, our kindergarten and first grade students coming in, knowing that we were going to the Common Core, those students actually started Common Core a year before it was required in New York State. So we actually revised the curriculum at that point for those students.
In
at the
11-12 or
prior, the year
Okay.
before.
Okay.
So that's why I said, the students who are in the middle school where you've got the Common Core exams didn't have some of that. And I think what our teachers are seeing is that the students, third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, who have had several years of that now, they're coming in with much more prepared for what they need to do. Not as true, although students definitely catch up and our teachers are working for those middle school and, the ninth graders who are right in the middle of that transition.
Yeah.
It's more pronounced, I guess, in math because it's so skill-based. And one thing kind of
Yeah.
feeds on the other.
Well, and definitely the data shows that the middle school students are the ones that seem to be,
Sure.
the struggle seems to be definitely reflected in the
Yep.
testing.
Although the scales are the same in the test, but, I've said before, we used to get on years ago, we had, we administered the test and we've got item analysis back. So you could look at every student and see which questions they did not perform well on and which areas they struggled with. We don't get that now.
Right.
What's interesting from this year's data is last year, overall, our middle school results were a little bit higher than elementary, which had not traditionally been the case. The middle school results for years had always been lower. And this year, we saw the elementary scores increase more significantly, and the middle schools kind of stayed the same or plateaued or even dropped in a few
Right.
situations. It could be the test, we don't know what items they didn't
Right.
perform well necessarily on. It could be that those students are still in the transition. In the elementary school, the students were doing, we had a new writing curriculum, and they did a lot of writing, maybe for ELA, that attributed to the, it's hard to know, how to use the test
Right.
data to really inform your curriculum or instruction.
And I thought on the special ed numbers, obviously, we're low, and there's been a lot of criticism and discussion about why are we subjecting, the special ed kids to these tests at all. I thought that the legislature in the final budget agreement had actually agreed to take the, to not allow or not require the special ed. Are they going to
No.
continue to have to?
So what they were talking about is they were talking about the option for students to take a different grade level assessment based on their cognitive ability.
Okay.
But that has to be approved by the federal government. That's not happened yet. And there's also a lot of areas of concern with that in regards to what one, grade level can be somewhat ambiguous. So how do you really determine what's the most appropriate assessment? If it's a 7th grade student, what we say, well, a 3rd grade assessment or 4th grade assessment might be most appropriate. Another
Right.
district could say, well, the 5th grade assessment.
Right.
So it's not that easy, but right now it would have to be approved by the federal government. It has
Okay.
not.
Because it
Kids
ju-
that are off assessment?
No, these are kids who are alternate assessment do not take these exams. They take a totally separate process.
But
They're
there's a
involved.
limitation to how many students you can have off assessment.
Exactly, and there's pretty strict criteria as to who qualifies for that alternate assessment.
I was concerned with the 7th and 8th grade special ed math scores. There's a significant drop, a noticeable drop. And I wasn't sure if you or Mrs. Johnson could talk about how you might, I think part of your talk will be moving forward, what are your expectations and what are your plans, but how you may be partnering to address that situation.
So obviously Kathy and I actually met with the CSE chairs as well, and Dave Hurst and I have met as well. Because overall, I would say the 7th and 8th grade math results, not just for special ed, but the general ed results are not exactly where we would like them to be. So one of the things, obviously, we have done is I think the resources the teachers will have and the alignment of the curriculum, I think will be a huge improvement because we've not had that aligned to the Common Core. Teachers were trying to pull resources from some of the modules on Engage New York. They had materials, but this is a comprehensive program. It's got a lot of resources and online resources for both students and parents. Again, I think that having those students also have had more instruction in Common Core in general will be helpful moving forward as well. And we're also looking at doing some release time with teachers to really look at how the instructional assessments they're using in class, what areas our students struggle with. Well, for example, 8th grade math teachers, they administer, an assessment and taking a look at what are the students struggling with. Is it something that they have a gap in? They didn't learn that because they're in the middle of this transition, or is it something we need to go back and really reteach with them? So we're aware that that's an area we need to address.
Thank you.
I have a couple questions as well. For 6th grade ELA, the percentage number dropped 13%, which is, out of the whole group, it was the only one that
Correct.
dropped.
Yep.
It could be an isolated test where maybe the test just wasn't understood by the students who were taking it. But how are we going to look at it this coming year to make sure that that wasn't, if that was the case or not
Sure.
the case?
Can I just piggyback on that? Can we see the comparison for the whole state for that 6th grade?
Right here? Yep. Sorry, that's not. So, right, so the entire state for grade 6 is down. You can see, Beth, we're above the state average, but I agree with, we noticed that too as well, that 6th grade was the only area that actually dropped from last year. Again, one of the things I mentioned is that in the elementary school last year, we implemented a new writing curriculum that is a lot of work, but we're continuing that same program up through the middle school this year. So there'll be consistency K-8. We've also aligned some of our reading expectations, K-8 as well. So I'm hoping that some of those changes will also transition to the assessments. Again, it's one group of students, so it's hard to know. You know, is it just this particular year that they drop? But we're trying to use whatever data we can from the state, which is limited for the exams, to see in which particular areas maybe did they not perform as well. I've heard the 6th grade exam was challenging more so than the 7th and 8th grade exams, but it was challenging for everyone in the state. So you have to take that, into consideration. So it's definitely an area that we noticed as well and are working on.
Is there,
Oh, go ahead.
well, it's relate to the same thing.
Okay.
Can I just ask, is there any way to incorporate reading? I mean, one of the, and this is national data, shows that, students who actually have reading as almost as a separate subject or some separate designation actually perform better. And we stopped teaching reading after 5th grade. I mean, if we had 6th grade at the elementary level, then we'd be teaching reading right through 6th grade.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
it's so important. I mean, they're even upgrading the ACTs, SATs, and the AP exams because the Lexile level of reading for those tests have dropped, over the
Right.
years, so they're working on raising those up.
So we've had that discussion. I mentioned that is one of the reasons for the trend, the drop in 6th grade. A lot of middle schools start the period schedule in 6th grade. In elementary, they have significant amount of ELA instructions, up to, with last year with the shift in writing, to probably 2 hours a day is not unlikely. They come to 6th grade and they have a 40-minute period of English every day. And as Lynn, you indicated that if students are proficient readers, they're getting reading within, the English class, but is that enough? So we've definitely talked about that as an administrative group about, how we could build more of that in, but it comes down to what do you give up to. We did add more AIS this year, specifically at the middle school for ELA, to try and get more students into that program to get some additional assistance, primarily in reading. And the other thing we implemented last year was the Scholastic Reading Inventory and the Scholastic Math Inventory, and students were administered that 3 times during the year last year to identify students who were struggling in either math or reading. And Mr. Klugman did some analysis of how students performed on that, granted it's 1 year, and how students performed on the state assessments. And it was, there was a high correlation for students who were either underperforming or overperforming, and how that translated to proficiency on the state assessment. So I think that gave us at least the, acknowledgement that there's some credibility in that data. So hopefully, we can continue to use that to really identify the students who need help in reading comprehension. Do they still need help in decoding? And by the board approving the additional AIS last year, hopefully we can get more of those students some services in middle school.
But shouldn't that reading also be across the disciplines to
Well-
some extent in math, science, and social studies?
Absolutely, and one of the things with Common Core, there's a social studies component and a science component that teachers are implementing, which a lot of that has to do with informational text and nonfiction. And we've done quite a bit of professional development, specifically with our English teachers at the secondary level, about how do you bring that in so it's not is more necessarily, but bringing that into what you're already doing and getting students to be, because that's definitely higher level text, nonfiction, informational text. So trying to do that more as well, I think, over the long haul will be helpful. Not just these assessments, but SAT performance, ACT performance. Yeah.
Sorry, go.
In regards to, and I'm going to use geometry as an example, where they're now using a Common Core textbook versus the older textbook. Some of the material is not the same for Common Core and the Regents. And how are you going to ensure that the gap has been filled for those students that have to take both exams to ensure that they may do well in one? Because some of the Common Core material, they haven't learned because they weren't brought up in the
Correct.
Common Core. So
It's a challenge. I mean, our instruction is based on, our curriculum is revised to align with the Common Core. And so that's what we're instructing students in. And if we see that they're struggling with an area, then we'll go back and try and address that as best we can. But, and there's a limited amount of time also, because you've got this amount of time before the students have to take the Regents. I mean, overall, our performance on the Common Core algebra was quite good compared to a lot of other districts, and our instruction was aligned to Common Core algebra. So it's a challenge for teachers, for sure, to try and fill in those gaps and still make sure you're teaching students all the material that they need.
So is the expectation to learn the Regents material and the Common Core, or what is the expectation
Well,
of
the
teacher?
expectation we had with the Common Core algebra was that if they learn the Common Core algebra, they would perform well on the integrated algebra Regents, which did happen. Our integrated algebra results were fine, and they were consistent with what we've done in the past. So I think that's kind of the same approach we're taking with the Common Core geometry, that if we're teaching at that different level, that students will still perform well on the traditional.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Any other questions?
Can you go to that slide at the end with the goals or what you're going to focus on?
The last slide?
Yeah, just, whoops.
Passed it.
Just the bullet point that you
Focus
talk
areas.
about, looking at IB and examining whether or not the district would want to go in that direction. Can you just talk a little more about that? Like, what would be the goal of doing that? Would that be providing, new opportunity for what level kids? I mean, what's the thinking behind that?
And just for the students where we get the slide, IB is the International Baccalaureate. That's what it stands for.
Correct.
Just,
So-
what's the reasoning behind that, and, what are we trying to achieve?
So this was generated, the concept of it, actually, for a few years, we talked about it, and what does that bring to the district, since we already have so many AP
Right.
offerings. And, there's been some frustration about where the AP has gone or where it's going. A lot of students don't get college credit for AP, and whether that's a money issue or not is debatable, I guess.
It's always about the money.
The International Baccalaureate program also, when looking at the population, coming in, we've got the Nano College here, we've got Global Foundries. There's a lot of, the International Baccalaureate is just that, it's international. So does that provide students with a different experience? So we didn't know a lot about it, so we started doing some research on it. Mr. Landry and myself kind of talked with people, and we actually went to Ballston Spa, who started a program a few years ago. We talked to a lot of districts about implementation. So the rationale to look at that is that the IB program, I think, does offer a different experience. AP is a much more traditional, you take an AP class, you go to that, you take the assessment, and you find out if you get, the credit you need for college, and it looks great for students, and we have great performance on those. The IB program is a little more self-directed. It's taught more, I don't want to say in modules, but it's a more interdisciplinary approach. It's also viewed very highly by colleges for students who do go through. You can do IB offerings, or you can do an IB program. And I think that students who do go through an IB program are viewed very respectfully by colleges. I think that depending on who you talk to, what colleges, some colleges, I think, prefer IB, they see students out of that program and think, wow, that's a really self-directed student who can handle a challenge. The IB program offers also a lot more oversight. They take, I would say, a lot of care. They're concerned about what is being offered. They're concerned that the teachers are appropriately trained and are delivering what they view is important. AP is much less overseen.
The goal would not to be replace AP, but offer it in addition.
Right, so what you could do is you could have, we would still continue to offer AP classes, but what you would look at is within the IB program, where are you overlapping perhaps with maybe some AP offerings, and look to see what you do and don't offer within both of those programs.
And one of the major things on the IB program especially is that it's an open enrollment type of program, whether you're on a partial program where you just dabble and take a class here or there, or you're in a part-time program, say a junior, senior year, or a full IB program, which is a 4-year course of study. The big thing is the validity of the assessments is one of the things that makes the colleges really strengthen to that type of program. One is we have our assessments here, but those assessments also have to be validated by an outside independent resource, and that ultimately is the final assessment.
Thank you. As we close this portion of the program, I just want to thank all the supervisors for coming and being available for us. Should we have questions, I realize it's been a long day, and especially with the start of school and open houses, we appreciate you coming in and spending some time with us. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is item 7, which is recognition of visitors for an item that is on the agenda for tonight. I just have to read the statement before we open the microphone. It is the policy of the Board of Education to allow public comment during the visitors period of the meeting. It is not our policy to engage in public debate. Your comments and statements are heard and are greatly appreciated. If there is information we can provide for you after the meeting, feel free to contact the superintendent's office with your request, and we will do our best to get information for your needs as soon as possible. Again, this particular period is for any item that is on the agenda. There's a second comment period for items that are not on the agenda later in the meeting. Is there anyone who wants to make a comment on an agenda item for this evening? No.
Including any questions
On the presentation.
presentation.
Okay. Seeing none, we will move over to item number 8, finance. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the following finance actions, items A through C. Is there a motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
That's the first and second. Any discussion?
I just have a question on the donation. Not really a question on the donation, but since a student, I think his name was John Latter, was the one who actually received the award, it seems like his name should be mentioned in here, that, recognition, the fact that he won the award for,
Good
the
point.
music department, for Mr. Dashu.
Good point.
And that's why, otherwise,
That's
the
why
award
the
for him,
district
we
is
would
also
be
getting-
getting it.
yes.
So I
Good point.
feel his name should be in there.
All right.
We can amend that.
Okay, thank you. There also notice there's several change orders on this section of the agenda. The facilities committees did meet and go over these change orders in detail with Mr. Nolte, and I believe we were satisfied with the explanations that were given. Any questions from the board on the change orders?
No, I read the-
If I can, just to give a quick update on the finances. As we talked before, we were about, at the initial start of the project, with all change orders going into the second round, we had a contingency amount of about $1.18 million. We also had an allowance amount of, I believe, around $200,000. And allowances are monies that are built into contracts already awarded in case unforeseen items came up. The total change orders to date that have been approved and the ones proposed tonight will basically mean to our budget of contingency that we will have roughly about $1.14 million still remaining in our contingency. In other words, there's about $35,000 in change order approvals tonight. There's also credits in here as well back to the district, but there is also the approval in the change orders of use of allowances in the amount of about $120,000, which has already been awarded to the companies for certain types of change orders. So in general, being about, and Scott Boris is here tonight from campus, being about 35 to 40% through completion of the project at this point is the rough estimate. We are into our contingency of that 1.18, only about $40,000. And we have probably about, I think, 13 outstanding issues or items that we'll have to address in the future. Of those, I think 9 or 10 of them are potential credits back to the district, and there's 2 more with the bus garage that are potential credit and a charge for a change order. Overall, it has been looking pretty decent. Greg would say the same thing. Unfortunately, he's out having a knee surgery at this point, so we want to hope that he gets better soon. So, but that's the general overview of where we are with change orders.
So anyway, I know our construction manager is present in the audience. Does anyone have any questions? Any questions or further discussion?
One question, but just for the public's benefit, we're on schedule with all of the,
We're making up time. We're getting closer to being on schedule from the 2-month delay from the state ed backlog.
Right.
I think Mr. Bowler said the high school roofs tentatively are scheduled to be done around the week of October 3rd. The tennis courts should be done next week. The slowest part has been the district stadium, but I think they've got all the soil screeded. They've got the major rim drain put in, and I think they're going to be starting to shift to the field drainage system, which sort of starts to build it. And I think they're going to shift gears a little and start taking apart the track at this point. So in general, we're moving forward in a productive way, but there haven't been a lot of hiccups, but there are delays, but I think we're getting closer to being on track. Oh. The site lighting for the district stadium, the light, did they put up the poles? I know they put in the bases, so they're starting to put up the poles and the lights, which is a major undertaking. That's what they needed to run electric to on all 4 corners of the stadium.
I know I've heard concerns from people because it seems like all summer they've seen this big pile of dirt and there's still a big pile of dirt
Yeah.
and don't understand the process.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. One of the things is during the summer months, because we were still gearing up, one of our major emphasis was, because we had elementary playgrounds and the same contractor is part of the playgrounds, that we wanted to make sure and ensure that they were open for the first day of school. So that sort of takes some of the labor force. But during that same time, we were also having to make sure that we make the selection between using grass seed and sod, which we did at the last board meeting, I think the August 13th, and then that takes a little planning time to start up with the screeding of the soil. Well, I think they started about 2 weeks after that, right before the start of school, but the screeding of that amount of full football field of soil, I think they had to screed it almost 2 or 3 times to go through the mill to take out any impurities, any rocks, so that when they actually now put down the sod that was approved, it will have a good natural base, as well as they added amendments to the soil to make sure that it's a fertile soil for inhibiting root growth. Is that the correct way of putting it? Not inhibiting. Encouraging. I don't want to inhibit it. We want it 4 inches as soon as possible. So I think that's one of the
It's just
things that they
people-
see is the frustration.
Sure.
Because there's not a lot of glamour. Right now, they've been digging probably about a 6-foot by 6-foot wide trench, sort of making a drain trench around the entire infield of the stadium. And now they have to start developing that up into the drainage system and the irrigation system, and then they start putting on the soil and grading it to a grade that's required for the sod.
Hey, could you just comment on the main competition gym at the high school, how that work is progressing?
The main competition gym, we had to take out the bleachers because I know that's probably the biggest thing for the pep rally. But the bleachers took about 4.5 weeks to take out, and there's been a variety of electrical work that has been going on during that time. One of the issues is that there's a significant amount of lead time on the new bleachers that will be coming in. And to get them ordered and prepped, you have to make sure you have the right measurements and the right backgrounds, that was all done, but you need the bleachers out. So they had to take those out. Right now, tentatively, I think the bleachers are scheduled somewhere around the 3rd week of October. Right. Yeah, so they're starting some of the prep work, and this is just an initial phase for the gym, because although they'll be starting to paint the walls and try to put a little paint on the walls, remember, next year, we have to take down the whole ceiling, we have to take down all the lights, so it's going to be staging. But the essence of the timeline now is about the middle of October, when the new bleachers get here, to about the middle to 3rd week of November, right before Thanksgiving. That gym should have the bleachers back in line, electrical up, and there might be a little crossover with basketball at the start of the season, but hopefully they can push that timeline. So that's where their projection is.
Okay.
And all of this is on the website so that they can follow along with some of the timelines as well.
Okay. Can we move to a vote? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That carries. Item number 9, professional personnel. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the following instructional staff actions, items A through F. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
First and second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. Abstentions? No, that carries. We are now at item 10. Support personnel. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the following support staff actions, items A through H. Is there a motion? That's a first and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed or abstentions? No, that carries. Item number 11, correspondence for action. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the following correspondence for actions, items A through B. Is there a motion?
So moved.
It's a first and second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? No, that carries. And item 12, recognitions of visitors. This time is for visitors to address any item not on the agenda. I believe the statement is the same, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes. So I won't read that again. The mic is open if anyone would like to address or bring something to the attention to the board. No? Okay. Future meetings. We have some locations, just changes or alterations to make note of. Wednesday, September 24th is an audit committee meeting at 5:30. The next board meeting is Wednesday, October 1st. The location is Eagle Elementary. Tell your friends if they're coming in as participation in government students. The meeting starts at 7. On Wednesday, October 15th at 7 o'clock is a Board of Education meeting. The location is Ellesmere Elementary. And Wednesday, November 5th is back at the high school for a regular Board of Education meeting at 7. There is no need for item number, 14? We don't need to go back into executive session, so is there a motion to adjourn the meeting? First, second, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed or abstention? That carries. Okay, for people in participation in government, you need to sign one of the sheets. There are 3 sheets here, 2 there, 1 here, and check your sheet to see if you need a Board of Education signature. Thank you for coming.